Thank you, Amanda. That was a great setup to what I would like to present to you is why does this matter? Why is it important for us to organize data and analytics, especially for rare disease drug development? And when c-path organizers asked me to present this talk, I felt like the world came full circle. Right now at Utsuka, I lead up our PKD drug development on the R&D side. But in the last decade, I used to be on the review team that reviewed the PKD biomarker, and I will present some of the lessons learned through that. What I hope to do after I get over with my disclaimer that these opinions are mine is to share with you what is Adpkd, that is autosomal polycystic dominant polycystic kidney disease, what is an unmet medical need, and most importantly, share a case study where the PKD consortium, led by c-path, funded by FDA, was a catalyst to drug development in Adpkd. It goes to why does this all matter and why we need to work together. And finally, I'll offer some closing thoughts on impact and importance of public-private partnership that has helped galvanize Adpkd drug development. Very briefly, Adpkd and its prevalence and impact in the United States is the most common inherited renal disease. It is the fourth leading cause of end-stage kidney disease. About 4 to 5% of end-stage kidney disease are attributed to PKD. In the United States, there are 140,000 patients about currently diagnosed with Adpkd. And nearly 50% of all patients with Adpkd will reach ESKD, the end-stage kidney disease, by age of 60. The state of therapeutics for Adpkd, if you look at, it has been actually a 500-year-old science, and it's an interesting slide I received from our colleagues at c-path, that the first written description of Adpkd is in 1500s, late 1500s. Up until 2017, there was no treatment available for Adpkd. A lot of research, a lot of registries, a lot of data generated throughout the period. However, and a lot of also basic understanding of the disease, and the disease pathway was identified in late 90s. But one of the reasons the drugs were not available is, as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, is the end point here is the loss of kidney function. But it really happens later in the life. As the kidney size grows, as shown on the slide here, the kidneys are hyperfiltrating, compensating, and while the cyst is developing and the kidneys are enlarging, you generally do not see the effect on eGFR as measured by traditional means. So what was happening back then, and you really had to roll back the clock in the last decade, that's why I said when I was on the review team, is we were really struggling with how do you measure this disease? Because if you were to measure end-stage renal disease or eGFR, it takes a long time, and it happens mostly in patients who are really at the later stages in their kidney disease. This is where PKD consortium came into play about 2010 and brought together industry, academia, regulators to bring about an awareness of how one can actually measure the disease, as well as how we can think about endpoints. What that led to, and this is what's kind of exciting from Otsuka's viewpoint, is it enabled a pathway for drug development and bringing a first drug to the market for Adpkd. As you can see on the slide, while the drug was approved and got to market in 2017 after one of our large clinical study was done, it took a long road to get there. And one of the important milestones I like to point out here is, and I'll speak more on that, is the 2015-2016, when under the auspices of the consortium and c-path, FDA approved TKV, that is total kidney volume, that is how large the kidney is, as a trial enrichment biomarker. And since then, the clock has rolled and it has been accepted as reasonably likely surrogate. So we have come a long way. But the seeds of this were sown much, much earlier when PKRF, the research foundation, was formed in 1987. And Otsuka, in parallel, was also doing drug development. So the point of this is it really takes a private mission, which is drug development by a company, but also a public-private partnership, because in this case, the data are limited. It is not like developing a drug for diabetes, where one sponsor can go alone. Data can be oil there, but here we might run out of that oil. And I think company realized that, and working with several stakeholders, this was made possible. Within this, I was reflecting as to what were the steps taken. I really like the analogy Amanda gave about creating a game of solitaire. It takes several years to do that. And in this case, for PKD, I hope this will serve as a good case study of how to go about bringing a change in drug development pathway and therapeutics. It took almost 5 years to go from data standards, data curation, modeling, to presenting a reasonable case to FDA that it can be used as one of the markers for measuring disease. What I call as these first 3 to 4 steps are boring, but essential. Without that, you cannot move. And in a rare disease, I think what this group did in terms of organizing all the data that came from NIH, came from industry, is absolutely essential. It's boring, but essential. What that led to is several conversations with FDA. I had a privilege of watching those on both sides. Is eventually TKV, the total kidney volume, was approved as a marker to assess the risk for rapid progression. And in recent times, it has been, in fact, approved as a reasonably likely surrogate. Why this was possible at the end, in my opinion, is it takes 3 things. And I think this is a good case study of how PKD Consortium was able to get the patient-centric mission that we want to accelerate drug development, bring therapeutics earlier to the patient, put a scientific rigor, because we are dealing with small amount of data, at least at that time, was small amount of data in Adpkd, but that's generally the case. And as Dr. Mullins and several others talked before, the data are limited. So we have to make sure that we use best scientific rigor, best quantitation possible. So the analytics platform that is proposed here is really exciting. And it does take a regulatory partnership. One company trying to do do this and do the advocacy by themselves may not be the best pathway. But as a group, if we go together, I think we can streamline drug development. And I think this Adpkd is a good case study to build upon. And I believe the platform will have PKD data. And the point here is also that the work in PKD also is not even finished. There are a lot of groups that still need treatment. We have served a fraction. And good thing what that has done is it has galvanized drug development in Adpkd. Obviously, these are competitor products, so I cannot put them on slide. But if you actually look at pre-2017, the amount of drug development clinical trial activity that was happening is very different than when we are in 2020. And that goes to these concerted efforts to streamline drug development in PKD. My closing thoughts on that is why do we need to do this? Why public-private partnership, is essential to galvanize PKD drug development? as I said, there are still populations that are not fully served. We need to make sure there is a regulatory acceptance so that the biomarkers or any new drug development pathway we want to come up with are accepted by health authorities. We have to continuously promote research so that we understand the disease better, we implement those in clinical trial so that our trials are efficient. And most importantly, I think this is one area where true precision therapeutics can be achieved because of the type of patients, and the variability is probably higher compared to common diseases. And at the end, I'll leave you with this thought of importance of bringing all data together, contributing the data to the common platform, is to promote diversity in clinical trials as well as diversity in our clinical practice. Because, as I mentioned, there are still, even in Adpkd, there are still patient groups that are underserved. They are not being reached. They are based on social determinants of health. The communities that do not have good access to treatment, or even for that matter, pediatric patients that are a small group of patients. And while we got to certain fraction of Adpkd patients, the work is not finished, but I do believe that such a model, that how Adpkd drug development was galvanized, can help bring about changes in other rare diseases and can serve as an example.